Hello everyone, what's Gucci? Hope you're having an awesome day wherever and whenever you're watching this. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video here at Most Amazing Top 10. You guys have been requesting more urban legends for so long now, literally in the comments of every video, so I'm back with another one today. And no lie, I think this is my favorite American state urban legend video we've done so far, and I don't need to introduce the series, you guys already know, so get your popcorn ready and let's do this. This is the top 10 scary Louisiana urban legends. Starting us off with number 10 are the Vampire Brothers. Has anyone seen the originals or the Vampire Diaries? I feel like these legends sort of remind me of that plotline with vampires in New Orleans, etc. But anyway, during the 30s, brothers John and Wayne Carter lived somewhere in the French Quarter of New Orleans. During the day, they worked as laborers and tried to keep to themselves as much as possible. But one day, a woman somehow escaped from their apartment bleeding as she went because her wrists had been slit. Police later found multiple other people tied to chairs with their wrists slit in their apartment, alongside dozens of dead bodies that had no blood. The story was that the brothers kidnapped the people to drink their blood every night after work. It took more than 8 police officers to hold down and catch the brothers before they were executed and buried. But the weirdest part was that years later, when another Carter in the family was being buried, the brothers' bodies had vanished from the vault. Legend goes on to say you can still see them roaming around New Orleans today, and someone who owned their apartment years ago said he once saw 2 figures that matched their description whispering to each other and then jumping off a 3rd floor balcony. That's basically the original's plotline. It's not even funny. Maybe it was based on this, it probably was and I just don't know. Coming in at number 9 is the La Prette Massacre. I'm just loving these, they're just so juicy. Louisiana is filled with so many legends, I just love this. But anyway, towards the latter half of the 1800s, a rich man from Turkey owned La Prette House and also claimed he was a disposed sultan. The man transformed the house into an Eastern pleasure palace essentially. The doors and windows were blocked with bars, incense filled the air, and men guarded the house as well. The gates were locked, so the place really was like an inescapable fortress. The house even had a harem filled with girls of all ages as well as young boys too. If that wasn't enough cause for alarm, one morning neighbors saw blood trickling out from under the iron gates. The police were called straight away and they forced open the doors to a scene of pure horror. Blood was everywhere. All over the walls and floors there were amputated limbs, headless bodies, and all the harem girls and guys, even the guards, had been sexually assaulted. And you'd think it was the Turk who had gone insane, but he was also found mutilated and buried alive somewhere on the property. As to the perpetrators, people think that maybe they were a pirate's crew that had unfinished business with the man, or maybe the Turk's own family. But can you imagine? There was so much blood it was oozing out of the property. That's horrific. Anyone staying in the house after that has seen people in Eastern clothing roaming the halls and even sounds of footsteps supposedly from all the people who have died there. At number 8 we have the Grunch. So the east of New Orleans was mostly just woodland initially, and legend has it a group of humans called the Grunch used to live in those woods. They were said to be a mix of dwarves and albinos who were forced to live there because people thought they were made by the devil, but then they inbred into something else completely. People said their offspring became inhuman in appearance. Grunch Road was meant to be a place where teens could go to make out if they weren't scared, but people started to go missing. Some goats and then actual people, all drained of blood and dead. And as this was happening, more and more strange deformed creatures started being seen. Apparently people believed that the people in the forest sold their souls for a beast that could protect them from everyone in society, whereas others believed after years of receiving cruel treatment they just went insane. They were murderous and cannibalistic, and it's said that if you see a stray goat that looks like it needs help near those parts, you shouldn't stop because it's just a trap. Filling our number 7 slot is Marie Laveau. Sorry if my French accent's bad, it probably is. And if you've seen American Horror Story Coven, then you already know who this woman is. Born in 1801, Marie was a central figure in New Orleans famous for voodoo. She had a lot of power and prestige and worked as a hairdresser, which essentially meant she basically knew the secrets of everyone in town. Rich, poor, black, white, she knew it all about everyone. She was the first person to mix voodoo voodoo with Catholicism to form a new religion that's still practiced today. It's called New Orleans voodoo. The legend goes that although Marie died in 1881, she resurrects every year on St. John's Eve to lead the faithful in worship. Her ghost, as well as her daughter's ghost who continued her magic after she died, have been spotted numerous times around New Orleans. Now at number 6 is the Rougarou or the Loup-garou. Now this is a legend that's been passed down from generation to generation. This creature is meant to be like a werewolf of sorts and is a pale white color. It wanders the streets during the night looking for a hero, which is a bit of a plot twist. It causes havoc in crowds until someone stabs or shoots it. When the first drop of blood comes out of it, the Rougarou turns back into a man and tells the person his real name. He'll go on to warn the hero that they can't mention the incident to anyone for a full year or they too will become a Rougarou themselves. Mostly parents tell their children about the tale to stop them from misbehaving, but it is apparently true. Coming in at number 5 is Madame Mignet Canal, I think. Probably not. Now, she wasn't famous or anyone well known, and I don't think anyone would have known who she was today if she hadn't committed suicide on the 3rd floor of her house. She hung herself from an overhead beam, but before doing it, she also killed her own small white dog. And after that, and after World War II, the house was sold to the grandparents of someone called Ramon. Now, Ramon said growing up when him and his siblings were misbehaving, their punishment would be sitting alone on the staircase going up to the 3rd floor. He remembered that every time he did that, he saw a woman wearing a white dress that he just didn't recognize, and she always had with her a small white dog. One night he woke the whole house because he was screaming in his room. When the lights came on in his bedroom, his cheek was bright red because someone had slapped him in his sleep. Even his father met her. He climbed into bed one night hoping to hug his wife, but instead was hugging this ghost. They saw a woman standing over one of the babies' cribs and they could see through her. They even used to hear barking from the 3rd floor when they definitely did not have a dog. Haunting confirmed. At number 4 is Count Saint Germain. Now Count Saint Germain was the epitome of a vampire, or what you've been told is a vampire based off, stuff like Twilight. He spoke 6 languages, was a master at the violin and piano, and he also composed his own music. He was insanely rich even though no one knew where his wealth came from, but he claimed he was the son of Francis II, who was the Prince of Transylvania. So his wealth could have been from being royalty, but no one even knew anything about his family or lineage. There was just no information about him. But supposedly he was very skilled at alchemy and had figured out how to attain immortality. He looked around 40 years old in all his portraits, and that look lasted for over half a century, and no one's 40 for that long, honey. Even at social dinners, no one ever saw him eat. He would just sip wine and speak about things that just made you feel inferior. He died in 1784, but there have been countless stories of people having seen him after that. In the 20th century, a man moved to New Orleans called Jacques Saint Germain who looked exactly like the Count and had the same wealth and knowledge, again having dinner parties but only ever sipping wine. Apparently one night a woman stayed late at his house and he tried to bite her neck, but she escaped and reported it to the police. When they went to investigate, he was nowhere to be found. What they did find was cloths with blood on them and bottles of wine, and the policemen decided to pour themselves wine but found that the wine wasn't just wine, it was wine mixed with human blood. Vampire confirmed. Filling our number 3 slot is the slave girl of Myrtle's plantation. Now this happened during a time where racial segregation was still prevalent in America and slavery was still a thing. In the 1800s, Myrtle's plantation was a lovely establishment owned by Judge Clark Woodruff, where he lived with his wife and 2 daughters as well as a few slaves. I'm talking few, but it was probably more than a dozen. A respected man of integrity to the town, but behind closed doors he liked to have his way with his female slaves. Chloe was one of those slaves. She was disgusted by the advances but thought if she didn't oblige, then he'd kick her out to the fields with the other slaves. And nobody wants to be on the field. So she complied, but after a while she thought maybe he was just getting tired of her. Just a side note, he twisted her ear once really badly to the point she started wearing a turban to cover her wound, and I swear this becomes important later on. But anyway, she wanted to concoct a plan to win his favor again, and the opportunity came when his eldest daughter was having her birthday party. Chloe went and picked an oleander plant knowing the leaves had and a bit of poison which she then added to the birthday cake. Her plan was that if the family got a bit sick, she could nurse them and prove herself. She liked the children, she was actually careful to only add a bit of the plant, but she grossly miscalculated. Soon after, the daughters and the judge's pregnant wife were all dead. Talk about a grave mistake. So scared of what the judge would do to them because of Chloe, the other slaves formed a lynch mob and kidnapped Chloe while she slept and hung her. When she died, they threw her body into the Mississippi River. The judge turned the plantation into a bed and breakfast later on, and guests said they saw small kids in the hallway mirrors and heard them calling out to each other. Very much later, a new owner took a picture of the house and saw a shadowy person on the veranda that was wearing a turban. So people theorize the souls of these women are trapped on the property forever. Now at number 2 are the Casket Girls. Now because of the reputation that New Orleans had back in the day, treacherous, some of the highest murder rates, notorious for missing persons, the area had trouble getting women to move there. And I mean rightfully so. Most men there were originally sent there because they were murderers, thieves, culprits of any crime really. But thankfully there was a boat full of women coming that the French had convinced to move to the city during colonization, but they all abandoned ship in Mobile, Alabama. Now these girls were called the Casket Girls because they carried small chests with them, but the chests were shaped like mini coffins. So when most of them escaped the boat, they left behind 300 coffins. Most of them were said to be empty, but some were rumored to contain the bodies of the undead, aka vampires. They were also nailed shut because they had a habit of opening themselves, which is just already suspicious. Later in 1978, a pair of reporters wanted to see the coffins, but the convent's priest said no. So the reporters climbed over the wall one night with all their equipment to see the coffins in real life. The next day, their equipment was thrown over the street outside, and on the front steps of the convent were their decapitated bodies, as well as 80% of their blood gone, and no one knows what happened to them. I mean, there are theories. And finally, at number 1 is La Laurie House. And I feel like this story has been in so many shows and movies, so most people probably do know about this one, but it's still a key legend from Louisiana. Located at 1140 Royal Street, this house is still one of the most haunted houses in New Orleans. During the 1800s, Dr. Louis La Laurie and his wife Delphine were known for always hosting lavish dinners there. She was charismatic and well respected, but Delphine had a sadistic dark side. The house had dozens of slaves, and she used to torture every single one of them. Due to cruelty laws, some of her slaves were auctioned off, but she just made her relatives buy them back for her in secret. She kept her cook change the fireplace for one, and she chased a young girl off the roof of her house with a whip. People started becoming suspicious when they started noticing that the slaves came and went quite quickly at the house, and some just straight up disappeared. Her neighbor actually saw the slave girl jumping to her death from the roof, and so rumors went around more and more, and people started declining invitations to the house. In 1834, a massive fire broke out in the house, supposedly started by the cook, and it went through the whole house. Honestly, if I was the cook, I would have done a lot more than just arson. But anyway, after the blaze was out, firefighters found a door, a secret barred door in the attic that hid more than a dozen other slaves. They were all chained to the wall, locked in dog cages, or strapped to makeshift operating tables. Body parts were all around the floor, heads, intestines, all of it, just in buckets around the room. Their treatment was horrible. Women had their stomachs sliced open and their intestines were wrapped around their waists. One woman had animal poo in her mouth and then it was sewn shut. There were a lot more, but I'll just leave it there. And either way, it was known that Delphine acted alone and a mob gathered outside her house, but she and her family vanished. Some say they went to France or wherever, but haunting started at the house as soon as they fled. Cries, groans, everything was heard, and finding anyone to live there was nearly impossible. And that's it for today's video, guys. I know this one was a really long one, so kudos to you if you stuck around till the end. I feel like the legends of Louisiana were just so interesting. I really didn't want to miss out any details, so I didn't. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments below, and as always, I've been your host, Eamon Hassan, and I'll see you next time. Bye!